What does it take to write a successful children's book? Today, we find out by meeting some of the youngest published authors in the country. Stay tuned. Meet the Author, or in this case, Meet the Authors, is next. And it's something to hoot about.
The following program is a production of the Fairfax Network, Fairfax County Public Schools.
Welcome to the set of Meet the Author. I'm Della Kidd, your host. My guest authors couldn't come today. They're in school, all 24. So, with a little help from their teacher and a few willing students, our MTA crew went to them. On today's show, you'll find out how a multi-age class of first and second graders from Lane Elementary School in Alexandria, Virginia, entered a nationwide writing contest and won. The prize, a published book, nationally distributed, and $5,000 value of reading materials for their school. The book's title is The Perfect Place for an Elf Owl. In the next few minutes, these young authors will share their book and provide a sneak peek to their sequel. They'll answer questions, offer ideas, and explain their writing process. For now, think about the answer to this question. What does it take to write a successful children's book?
To be a successful children's author, you need a good story.
It has to be exciting. Fiction or nonfiction, it has to be exciting.
And a good plot helps. Interesting characters, a theme, and some sort of message. There's so many ingredients.
In order to be a successful children's author, you need to read to write. Reading helps writers write.
In order to be a successful children's author, you need a plan.
That's right. If you're going to set out to write a book, it helps to have a plan. More on this in a moment. But first, what's The Perfect Place for an Elf Owl about? It's a classic storyline of journey and hope. A small elf owl leaves his nest and travels to unknown lands in search of home. The story is also filled with lots of facts. Here's a brief snippet from The Perfect Place for an Elf Owl. And just to set the scene, the little elf owl has just bumped into a barn.
The wind blew again. The owlet bumped into a barn. He asked the barn owl chicks, "Is this my home?" The barn owl chicks screeched, "A barn is no place for an elf owl."
Barn Fact Box. The barn is a perfect place for barn owls and their chicks. A barn has lots of mice that hide in the hay. Barn owls love to eat mice. A barn gives shelter to the barn owls. They build their nests in the rafters, which are high above any danger.
A strong breeze blew. The owlet bounced into a boreal forest. He asked the boreal owl, "Is this my home?" The boreal owl said, "A boreal forest is no place for an elf owl."
Boreal Forest Fact Box. The boreal forest is a perfect place for boreal owls because the forest has prey like chipmunks and ground voles that are yummy to eat. Boreal owls can hide in the branches of a spruce tree.
The wind puffed. The owlet ended up underground.
So, meet the authors. It's a multi-age classroom of first and second graders. Average age, 7.5. Their teacher, Nicole Grunewig, says the story of the elf owl began as an exchange of ideas.
They started brainstorming of what they wanted to write about, and after many, many thoughts of ninjas and princesses and things like that, it came to an elf owl because we were studying the desert, and an elf owl was one of their favorite animals there. So that's how the story began. The book contest really motivated the kids because they thought they might win, even though I was trying to temper that a little bit because I knew lots of entries would be there.
There were thousands of entries and 5 rounds of judging.
This book had so many elements going for it. This is our 2011 nonfiction winner, and they did such a great job of making nonfiction fun. They have so many facts, interesting facts about not only elf owls, which is the title of the book, but all kinds of owls, and yet they did it in such a fun format with the text. And then their illustrations were amazing because they used a lot of different elements in their pictures. There was a lot of texture. It was just charming and immediately stood out.
We'd all been anticipating this big book signing, and the kids were so excited. When the night came, they were just so proud. The pride I saw in their faces when they marched into the auditorium and sat down in front, and they were feeling so special. It was just amazing to see that. And then they were awarded those beautiful certificates and a medal, and then they got to sign their books, and they were so proud to sign their books. Some of them had learned how to write their name in cursive, especially for that night.
My favorite part is when the lady said that we won, and I was so surprised, and I didn't know that we won. If you read books, you write books, because it's really easy once you see a book and you're like, I can do this.
Never give up and always do your best.
You have to read books to write books. It took lots of work, but it was really fun.
Coming up, finding the right mentor in the form of a book and a book buddy. But first, understanding writing as a process based on the publication of The Perfect Place for an Elf Owl by students at Lane Elementary. Woo-hoo.
We brainstormed ideas and decided to write about owls.
After we wrote down our ideas, we read them aloud.
We wrote our first draft on chart paper and we read it out loud to the whole class.
Before we started writing, we needed to do research. We had to gather information from books and the internet so we could learn about different types of owls and their habitats. We used fact boxes in our books to share information.
Revising means to change and improve your writing. We thought about what we wrote, then added, cut, or changed our ideas.
Editing and proofreading is the final changes we make in your writing. Our first choice for our title was Who is My Mother? But it was too similar to Are You My Mother by Dr. Seuss, so we had a vote and Perfect Place for an Elf Owl won.
Illustrations are important when you make a picture book. Our collage was inspired by Eric Carle.
Publishing is a way of sharing our writing and illustrations. The best thing about being an author is that you get a chance to write and share your books to the world.
If you're just tuning in, you're watching Meet the Author. Welcome back. Today we feature 24 writers of one children's book, The Perfect Place for an Elf Owl. So, once the students started the hard work of research and drafting, they became mini experts about owls and their habitats.
Can you tell me about owls? The barred owl lives in the swamp and it eats worms and spiders. Spotted owl has spots on his wings, his head, and his body.
Snowy owl is white, so it could camouflage with snow. And the snowy owl is diurnal. There's only 2 owls in the world that are diurnal. The snowy owl and the burrow owl.
Today, the kids are learning about monarch butterflies. It's a sequel of sorts to Elf Owl. We'll return to Nicole Grenowig's classroom in a moment. For now, let's find out what young readers really want to know from the authors of The Perfect Place for an Elf Owl.
Where do elf owls live and how big are they?
Elf owls are about this big and they live in the desert.
And when Gila woodpecker leaves its cactus, it has a hole. That's where elf owls live.
They weigh as much as 12 pennies.
Yeah.
How did you begin?
Oh, we had groups, and when we organized, we had the groups pick out some books, read about them, and do the illustrations. Is the book fiction or nonfiction?
I think
the book is both nonfiction and fiction because there's fact boxes and there's the story, and like owls don't usually get lost from their mouth.
It's not based on a true story, but it has true facts in it.
It took several months to write The Perfect Place for an Elf Owl. Every day during their language arts block, students would exchange ideas, images, and words to create the perfect picture book. During art class, teacher Libya Dolman would collaborate on the project as well. She introduced words to the kids like texture and shape and complementary colors to enliven each page of the picture book.
Students were organizing groups according to different owls. So there was the barn owl group and there was the elf owl group. We decided to explore texture and color in particular because we knew that was going to be key to truly accurately showing the habitats that these owls lived in. We thought a lot about lines, textures, shapes, and colors when we made the owls in their habitats. And that's really important because this is true to what we see when we look out in the world. So after the kids wrote the rough draft, I asked them to each take a few lines from the story and illustrate them. And this was the planning process where we were thinking about the idea that an illustrator narrates the story using pictures. And this is really kind of a natural idea for kids, this whole idea of visual literacy, because students, younger students especially, really use pictures to learn how to read. They read the images and that supports their reading of the text.
Students made their story their very own, but they were encouraged to think of accomplished writers and illustrators as their mentors.
Throughout the year, we've studied different authors and used them as our mentors for writing, and we've looked at their writing really carefully as our mentor text. And for the Elf Owl book, we used Eric Carle and Gail Gibbons as our mentors. And we looked at Eric Carle, how he had repetition in his story and how his illustrations were made with his own papers. And the nonfiction part came from Gail Gibbons, who is a nonfiction writer.
At first glance, Nicole's idea to use books as a way to model excellent writing may seem unremarkable, but it really shows she's at the top of her game as a teacher. When she uses the words mentor text, she's not kidding. Today, teachers frequently reference the same 5 or 6 books throughout the school year. They do this to explain how authors tackle the mechanics of writing. Mentor texts are helpful classroom tools, but for a little one-on-one to motivate youngsters to read and write, try your local high school book buddy. Check this out.
Book buddies, definition, high school students who share their love of reading with younger students. Each Friday afternoon, members of the Book Buddies Club at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology visit a nearby elementary school, buddy up with a younger student, and read.
And we would read to kids who generally had trouble reading in their classes, and we would help them. Sometimes we would read to them, sometimes we'd read with them. It would be once a week sessions, and it was really just, it was an awesome experience that we treasured a lot. So that's who Book Buddies is, and right now we're trying to expand ourselves to cover a lot more elementary schools and just reach out to a lot more kids.
And through their desire to mentor more youngsters, these Book Buddies put on their thinking caps and launched an ambitious plan called Destination Textploration, a one-day event exploring the world of text through many forms. So with passports in hand, young children and their parents were magically transported to faraway lands through fables and fairy tales shared by various culture club members. Stories were told through dance, stage performance, text-related activities,
I'm the color of a carrot,
an author visit, and culminated with a donated book or two to call their very own.
To be a mentor means to be someone who can inspire, someone who serves as a role model to any kid. At my age, even as a senior, I still have mentors who sometimes they can be older, they can be younger, they can come in any form. And in fact, even a book can be a mentor because it is something that can make you want to do something, make you want to take action.
Book Buddies. Definition: kids inspiring kids.
Kids can inspire one another, and I think that's the whole point of contests like the Kids Are Authors Award Program. Let's take a little more inspiration from the Lane Elementary authors and turn a few more pages of their first place nonfiction award-winning publication.
The wind blasted. The owlet slipped into a swamp. He asked a barred owl, "Is this my home?" The barred owl hooted. The swamp is no place for an elf owl.
Swamp Fact Box. The swamp is a perfect place for barred owls. The swamp is squishy. Frogs and salamanders like wet places, and they are the perfect prey for barred owls.
A gentle breeze drifted. The owlet jumped into the jungle. He asked a spectacled owl, "Is this my home?" The spectacled owl peeked through his feathery glasses and said, "The jungle is no place for an elf owl."
What did you do to make the illustrations? Some of us stayed in the classroom to paint the owls, and the other people who went with our art teacher went upstairs to make all the details.
Also made our paper, cut them, and did the background. Some people did the background, some did the facts, and I did the elf owls.
How long did it take to write the book? A really long time. Can you tell me a little bit about the writing process? Revise and revise and revise. So we had to start all over and start all over and start all over. Write and then revise and revise. Like if we have better ideas and we don't like the old ones, we just scribble them out and put new ones. Did you enjoy writing the book?
I really enjoyed working on the book because you have to work with your classmates like a family.
Were you surprised when you found out you won the contest?
Yeah, I was like surprised. My teacher was like crying.
Stay tuned. Will the elf owl find his perfect place? What happens when the spectacled owl forces the elf owl out of the jungle? But first, what everyone needs at a book signing.
What you need to know to go to a book signing is know how to write your name and not be so mad and be patient.
And now, more on monarch butterflies and ways to write a book.
Although the Elf Owl book was a collaborative work, we're doing individual monarch books, and they're using the different parts of the writing process they learned through that whole group effort and using it in their own individual books. When you're looking for information to write a book, what's that called?
Researching.
And it is a nonfiction book, and so they have lots of text features in the book, and it starts with a table of contents, and they have different chapters with lots of monarch information.
I learned the larva is actually a small, but the larva actually eats its way out of the eggshell.
Stems point to the sky. So I would share some information either through a book or a videotape or just my own knowledge about it or just our own observations of the monarchs. And then the kids would use that information they learned to write ideas down in their science book or their social studies book to use as information to do their writing from. And then they would go back and reuse those notes to do their drafts for their chapters.
Writing is integrated into all subject matters in this classroom. Between note-taking and bookmaking, students can observe the life cycle of a monarch butterfly as well as write about it.
When we grow up, most of what we read is nonfiction. And the kids need to be aware of all of the different nonfiction features. Who can tell me what a caption is?
It's a word that tells us what's the picture.
When they're reading nonfiction and then in turn writing nonfiction, they're really internalizing all of those features like captions, labels, headings, bold words, and to write those means they really understand them.
This edition of Meet the Author began with a question. What does it take to write a successful children's book? We heard these answers.
To be a successful children's author, you need a good story.
A good book has to be exciting and engaging.
In order to be a successful children's author, you need to be willing to revise.
You need to be at least 7 years old.
In order to be a successful children's author, you need a plan.
I don't know if there is one right answer, but I do agree that good writing can happen at a very early age. And for that to happen, teachers, books, and book buddies go a very long way. For Meet the Author, I'm Della Kidd. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep dreaming. And for now, keep watching. Okay, spoiler alert. Don't you want to know how The Perfect Place for an Elf Owl concludes?
The air burst into wind. The wind dropped the owlet into the desert. He asked the mama elf owl, "Is this my home?" "Yes," said the mama owl, "and you're late for dinner." The owlet snuggled up into the saguaro cactus. He was home, and he was happy.
Let's talk about the illustrating process now. Once you get the words down on paper, what's next?
The next process for me, because I do nonfiction work, is I have to get a wide variety of photographs of a particular animal, because I need to see what their feet look like, their face, their body. And then I start, the process of imagining the environment in which I'm going to place the animals. It's not totally imagined. I have to know what the habitat is. I have to have all the factual information together. And then that's when I really start the process of figuring out how I want to depict that animal. That's where the artistry comes in, and I get to use my imagination. So that's really a wonderful extension of this whole educating process of, exciting kids about the world of nature.
Absolutely. Artistry, imagination, research. It's a perfect combination. Editing is an important part of the writing and drawing process. Let's take a look at how Susan prepares each page for the best, most appealing design.
So this is where I work in my studio. What I do is I get a wide variety of photographs. As you can see here, I have different pictures of the puffin, diving, on a rocks, flying, taking a really good look at what its head looks like with a spectacular beak. Basically, I'm just fooling around. I'm thinking, how many birds do I want to have? I think I might want to have one kind of here. Maybe I want to have one here. I know that I want to have one diving, so maybe one is diving this way. So, something like diving like this, okay, with this fantastic beak. See, it's very, very, very rough in the beginning. I mean, I'm just thinking about composition. This is simply where I'm getting my ideas down for the general idea I want to head into with each illustration. I do this with every single thing I do for any book, and I can go through 20, 30, 40 pieces of paper for one image. This is my first idea of how I want the birds to be positioned. These two Atlantic puffins are up here. One is diving in the water. Okay, now I'm going to have these on big rocks, and I'm going to have a huge wave coming in. And I think, I don't really like that very much. Let me look at this a different way. Maybe I have them on rocks. Maybe they're just on 3 rocks, 1, 2, 3. And I don't have anything in the background except maybe some patterns in the water because I love patterns. Okay, I don't really like that. Why don't I try just one huge rock? Just one rock with some wonderful diagonal patterning in it. No, I'm going to try something else. Let's see. Hey, I like this idea. Now I've come up with a wide variety of rocks. I have rocks over on the left that are off in the distance, and I have a few waves that are coming in. And hey, I added 3 little birds in the sky, needed a little something in the sky. Sometimes you come up with ideas at the very end that really pull a picture together. I feel really good about this. I think this is the picture I'm going to go with. So I'm working right now on a final illustration. This is my Atlantic puffin, which is a fabulous bird that lives off the coast of Maine. I haven't done the feet on this one. So I'm going to mix a little orange and a little yellow. Mixing colors is so much fun. I've got the color that I think I want to paint, but I like to just make sure. So I just kind of twirl my brush around so that the tip is absolutely perfect. You can see where I have paint that I need to cover up. So I'm going to start doing that here. So this is the process I go through. I have many more hours of work on this. I'd say another day and a half and I'll be finished with this illustration. But let me show you an example of one that I've actually already finished. This gives you an example of how many sketches I did. This is my very last picture. All those drawings to get to one final image. So when you look at a book, what you see in the book was arrived at after many, many, many sketches and drawings.
Gosh, there's so much detail and so many revisions. Do each of your illustrations for each of your pages of your book go through that process?
Definitely. I can't imagine any picture I've ever done that hasn't taken at least 15, 20 different sketches, you know, to come up with that image. Just feels just right. It's choreographed and you feel like this is it. Yeah.
You have to stick with it. That's for sure.
You got to
it's
stick
a
with
lot
it.
of time involved.
Yeah, but it's part of the grade process. I don't have any trouble with all the revisions and all the different sketches.
When you're seeing things grow and develop, it's got to be very inspiring too.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm here in the MTA studio with author Susan Stockdale. Do you have a question? Give us a call. Our phone lines are open. Our number nationally is 1-800-231-6359. If you're calling us locally, you may reach us at 703-978-1636. First grade teacher Suzanne Roberts also read Fabulous Fishes to her class, where they focused on the rhyming words and alliteration. The students decided to create a book of their own, and guess what? They decided to feature birds. Their book is entitled Beautiful Birds. Let's have a look at these budding artists in action. So what did you think?
Overwhelmed. This is just so exciting to see all this come to life. To feel like you've inspired, it's just the greatest compliment, really. It's a privilege.
It's a lot of talent. We have their final product here. I have it with me, Beautiful Birds. And I understand you're working on
This is unbelievable because
there is a coincidence here.
I'm working on a book on birds right this very minute.
Well, I want to share a few pages with you
Wonderful.
And have you comment. Birds that flash their colors is one of the pages.
This is so funny because that is the frigate bird, which I actually created that illustration already for my forthcoming book. And here is my copy of the frigate bird, and it's this fabulous bird that lives in the Galapagos Islands.
It's got a big red fat
Yes,
chest.
the male. Yes. Normally it's sort of flesh-colored, and it inflates his chest to turn bright red to attract a mate. So that is just unbelievable.